listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and people who play it. Today is September 14th, 2025, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing on this fine Sunday morning?
Oh, Spencer, hello. Good morning to you as well. I'm doing well. I just wanted to just start the show by saying thank you to everybody for the kind words about 700 episodes last week.
Yeah.
Wherever I saw stuff come through on Discord, I saw stuff on Twitter and other places. So yeah, thanks. It was a cool milestone. And, we didn't make a huge deal about it for the episode or anything, but it was really, it's cool to cross a big number. And it was nice to hear from a bunch of people who just said, hey, great job. Keep it going. Love the show, whatever. Means a lot. It's not why we do this, but it is certainly validating. So yeah, thanks everybody who checked in, and I'm glad you liked the show.
I am also very much honored that there's so many folks out there who listen in and enjoy the show and enjoy the content and want us to keep going. And there was a few like, here's to 700 more episodes and whatnot that happened in there. And yeah, we'll keep doing them, man. It's people keep supporting patrons, doing all right. I'm glad to see new people join in every now and then and support the show. So, thanks so much to all the listeners out there, and we'll keep making them. I don't see a stop in sight at the moment, and we got BlizzCon coming up next year, which is going to be super exciting. So, lots of fun stuff going on there.
Okay, I assume that WoW will be around long enough for 700 more episodes weekly to be a possibility. It doesn't seem like it's going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
So, we'll see what happens. I mean, I guess like once upon a time, 20 plus years and going strong seems ridiculous, right? In 2004 or 5, nobody ever would have thought that it would get to this point. But now it's like, well, what would it, if it weathered the BFA and the Shadowlands storm, like what would it take?
I think analysts back then would be like, oh, we'll be on like WoW 6 by the time it's been 20 years or something, right? Like whatever new iteration of the game or whatever it is that would look like. I think would be what they would assume we'd moved on to based off of the trends of gaming back then.
Yeah, true. Because, the market leader at the time was EverQuest, right? And EverQuest 2 had just come out. It was like, well, maybe that's going to be the model, but it turned out not to really be the case. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think the future of WoW is pretty bright for the next, 4 or 5 years at least. And because that's we can see that far just about at this point, knowing about, World Soul and all that. So, and I have a feeling that we're going to see some really big stuff. You got to figure after Last Titan, they're going to take it in a new direction, because it kind of wraps up 30-ish years of storytelling, right? From going all the way back. So, it seems to be sort of putting a cap on some of these things have been swirling for a long time, and then maybe a chance to go in a different direction with the storytelling and everything. So that could be really exciting if they can, stick it, which, I think they've been doing a great job with building up the world and the story over the last couple expansions. So, and you got Metzen back in the chair, which is reassuring. So, yeah, I don't know. We've been covering this game for so long that it's really weird to think back on it, because the game seemed old back then, but now it's like the stuff that we were initially started covering is super old. So yeah, here we are. I don't know. It's weird to start thinking about. So I try not to do it too much.
Well, and there's been some low-key conversations about WoW returning to less of the universe is at stake, smaller stakes kind of plot inside the expansion. So I think it'll be nice if they do move that direction after this, so that we can actually see some storylines that are much more contained within Azeroth, and much less the fate of the world is at stake because of whatever it is that's happening. So I think that would be very nice. So we'll have to wait and see what they end up going with. But yeah, this past week in WoW, so we full re-cleared in Mythic on Sunday, and then started working on Soul Hunters, and worked on Soul Hunters on Monday, and we had several 1% wipes. We're just not quite there, so we'll knock them out this week. We did get Fractilis last week, so that was that went down. Basically, like night one for us was go in, and re-clear and kill Fractillus, and then we were basically, we did a few pulls on Soul Hunters, and then went to Soul Hunters full time on Monday, and spent Monday night on Soul Hunters. And like I said, saw some 1% wipes where we were just like right at the very end, and there was like a different call that had been made at some point. Someone hadn't died early, like just little things that you could clean up that would have made all the difference for getting that kill. So then this week we'll knock that out. And then we're on Nexus King, which is a large step difference between everything else we've been fighting. So there's this like semi, okay, this is now the prog boss kind of feeling that kicks in of like, this is going to be a boss that's going to take 150 plus pulls, and we're going to have to really learn it, and people are going to have to really be on, on their best behavior kind of idea. And we did see some nerf stuff start to come through. So the Blizzard has acknowledged that, hey, you know what? Only like 40 teams have cleared the raid, so maybe we should start moving this along a little bit for some of these teams. When you get 200 and something plus people on the, on the last boss, 200 and something plus raid teams on the last boss trying to kill it, you're like, that's a lot of teams on this boss. And then you look at Nexus King, and it was a similar thing where everyone just sort of hits these big roadblocks and just stops, and all these teams start backing up against it. So yeah, they're changing that up. This is also a week that we're heading into, obviously the week that we're currently in. When we're recording, we got the enchant buff where all of our enchants are more effective. But the week we're heading into will be a 3% increase in damage and healing done for the raid. So that'll be another one of those, extra boosts that sort of help people get stuff progged even farther. So if we can get full raid clear plus Soul Hunters plus some looks at Nexus King this week, I think we're looking pretty great on what our prog could be trucking along as, because I think we could see that 130 to 150 pulls on Nexus King pretty reasonably, if not better, depending on what the nerfs sort of feel like. And then it will be on to Dimensius and just really what that boss is going to feel like. I know, and we'll talk about this more later in the show with the nerfs and stuff that happened. They nerfed the pushback is the biggest change that I think people are saying helped them in prog, is how hard on the platforms that you transition to after phase 1 that pushback is. So I'm looking forward to a smoother prog, since they've changed some of that stuff up and made it more forgiving, which will be good to see. But yeah, raid was good. I went and did this week so far. So that was last week. This week, I did a heroic sort of pug. And out of that, happened to get my heroic boots to replace my normal boots, which was great. And again, it's one of those pieces that are kind of weird, because the boots you get off Soul Hunters get better based off the difficulty they drop from. And even if you upgrade them to being inside the realm of the next eye level of difficulty, so if you take a champion set and max them out, so technically they're heroic eye level, or take a heroic set and max them out, technically they're mythic eye level, they don't upgrade that percentage of proc chance. It has to drop from the higher thing. So the extra 10% is going to be really nice. I'm going to really look forward to having that for the extra 10% proc chance on my cloak. And then we actually went on and did Nexus King, and I got the trinket off Nexus King, which was great too. So there was a couple of nice things from just doing that heroic, which worked out really well. So I was quite pleased about getting in and doing that. Plus, it's always nice to get that buff early in the week, which means that when we go and do re-clear, I just already have the increased, bonuses that you get. So in this case, it's my weapon enchants are better than they previously were. Like just walking into the raid with that, as opposed to being like, no, once we kill 4 or 5 bosses, then this will kick in and it'll feel really good, especially when it's the 3% increased damage and healing. Like it's just nice to walk in with that as a buff. So that was big for me. But yeah, that was my raid this past week so far. That's all I've sort of done raiding wise. How about you?
Well, so Sunday, when we last spoke, it was like, okay, well, we have nothing but Plexus Sentinel Mythic to look at for all night Sunday, and it was a super frustrating night because I couldn't really bring the people that I wanted to for initial Mythic prog. Right. A couple people were just not available, and one guy who I was kind of really depending on for numbers and for grips, he ended up being like an hour late unexpectedly, so we didn't really have any good pulls for about the first hour. Even just like getting through the first shield was like a big problem. So that was disappointing. I think we had like a 3% or a 2% wipe Sunday night. And it's like, man, if we could have just had a night full of good pulls, we could have killed this probably a lot earlier and even had time to look at Soulbinder. So it was what it was. I mean, just kind of realistically looking at it, I was like, when I assembled the pieces that I had for the night, I was like not optimistic, but I mean, that happens sometimes. It's still early. It's like, it's pretty early for us to even be like doing a mythic boss or like the hardest mode boss. It's been a long time, I think, since we started working on that so early, because normally we'd be like about 5, I don't know, like an extra couple weeks into the season because we'd still be working on AOTC, whatever. So, that's fewer vaults and just fewer time for people to get upgrades and, iron stuff out with their specs or whatever. So I wasn't like too mad about it, but it does suck to have a 2% on the first boss. Like, it just felt bad. I knew I was missing Wednesday raid because I had something going on at night. So unfortunate to miss yet another raid night early in the season, but it should be probably the last one for a while. But I knew it wasn't unexpected. I knew it was happening. So Tuesday we prioritized heroic skip just to get last 2 dead. I figured, they can go in and redo. They could do the earlier mythic stuff with somebody subbing in for me tanking, but Nexus King and Demencius are going to be harder for somebody to just step in and tank.
Yeah, I think you meant earlier heroic stuff, right? You said mythic stuff. Just confirming.
Yeah. The heroic 1 through 5 or 1 through 6. I figured like, okay, I don't need to do those really, and somebody else can do it in my stead on Wednesday. So. Then Tuesday turned into we just couldn't get good Demencius pulls. Like, I don't know, people just didn't have their game faces on. We're having 4 or 5 deaths in phase 1, and it's like, all right, reset it, just die. Or we'd have like a decently clean phase 1, and then people would immediately start dying in phase 2, and it's like, I just need you to survive up until the phase 3 burn is over, and then you can do whatever it is you've been doing for the last hour. So that was that was frustrating because it should get easy. I mean, it was obviously like easier than the prog kill, but I felt like it was, sometimes you have those kind of regressions where it's like you pull a boss you've killed a couple times and people start getting, I don't know, like too loose with it and just not respecting it. And then you have that kind of situation. So that left us with only about an hour for Mythic for Tuesday night, which I was hoping was going to be more like an hour and a half. But we had a pretty strong roster. We had some pumpers, and we had all the split that we needed. So we did get Mythic Plexus. It took us basically the rest of the night Tuesday. I think we finished like right at the end of raid time, but it was cool to get it down. I mean, that's a big win, getting the first one down. And it is one of the harder like first Mythic bosses they've done in a long time, I feel like. So, I don't think any shame in it taking as long as it took as early in the season as we were looking at it. So that was cool. It's a big win tonight.
Yeah, I would just start popping there. I would say Plexus is definitely one of the first bosses of a raid for Mythic that had one of the highest healing requirements. And what I mean by that is there's enough weird overlaps with damage, or just not weird, but I guess there just are enough overlaps with damage that you just have to be really paying attention to people's health consistently. So like you'll have the circles you want to drop off to the side of the room happen, which will drop people low at the same time as a soak is spawning. And so people coming back in from that are going into a soak. So you have to be sure that even though they just got dropped to 40% health for dropping their circle at the side of the room, going into the soak, they need to be topped up high enough that they can take another 50 or 60% of their health and hit from that. And then if you couple that with, hey, the tank bomb's going to go off shortly after that, that's another 40 or 50% hit that's going to happen as far as that goes. So it's just like you really are consistently trying to keep people topped up. And during the intermissions that happen, everyone's running through a gauntlet, but they're all taking consistent damage as they're running through a gauntlet. So your healers are then pressured to heal on the go a lot more to try, or at least to get to the end of it faster so they can heal people as they're sort of arriving and coming into range, which is the other factor that sort of kicks into that. So it's definitely from that perspective of trying to keep people alive, both from people having to use their own personals to stay alive, but also from a healing perspective. I think as a first boss to a raid tier, it's just one that just had a higher requirement. So it was a little bit more off-putting, I think, for some teams that were trying to get into it.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think the DPS check on popping the shields was it feels decently high for our team. We ended up 5 healing it, which is what made the difference, but also then that puts more DPS pressure on the fight, so people really got to bring it, which like I said on Tuesday we had a pretty solid group for that, so yeah, it worked out great. I was happy to get that finally down. We had like, I don't know, 40 polls on it or something probably, which is absurd. But I mean, that's just kind of where we're at. I don't feel like it should have taken that many, but you know, we'd have polls where the first mechanic would go off and 2 people would instantly die. And it's like, okay, you guys need to spread out just like another 2 yards. Like why are you instantly dead? Like we cannot prog this fight if you're going to do this. So, you know, we worked that out. Wednesday, I think they did normal to start and then started working their way back through heroic, but didn't finish. So I think tonight we have heroic, soul hunters, and fractilis, which we'll put down, and then we'll spend the rest of the night on mythic soulbinder. So we'll see. It kind of depends on who I end up with. It doesn't seem like it's too hard of a boss, and so as long as I have a decent squad, we might be able to squeeze it in. The fact that we have some heroic bosses to clean up, and especially the big one, the one that has the good loot, you know, we got to go in there and do it. So, you know, it's going to eat into our time a bit, but it was a weird raid week for me, missing Wednesday, but I shouldn't be missing anymore. So, you know, it's just like I missed Wednesday for good, you know, fun personal reasons. It wasn't some obligation that was keeping me from raiding. It was something I wanted to be doing, but it does kind of then throw off your whole WoW schedule for the week, especially when you play as regimented as I tend to. It's like, oh man, missing a whole night is just weird, especially when it's like week 5 or whatever it is of the season.
It's weird because you feel like you're coming into the middle of something. It's like you're used to starting something off fresh and getting in there, and the whole team's kind of getting together, and they all have that same mentality. Whereas when you show up on night 2, and as your first night, they've already done all of that, and they're there, focused and ready, and into it already. They're already 7 steps ahead of you thinking wise, is what I find. I sort of feel like when I show up after missing a night or something like that, is it's like, oh, I need to catch up. I feel like I'm behind now as far as like just our mental rating state goes. So yeah, it's definitely a different feeling thing for sure. Mythic Plus wise, I mean I did my keys last week, although this week's been going real well so far. I actually the big key this week was I timed a 15 priory this week, which was kooky to get that done.
That's some big pulls to get that in time.
Big pulls, man. That was we were down to the last 15 seconds or so when we actually finished it, and it was a key that you really do have to like have a lot of vocal, a lot of planning, a lot of, you know, very consistent DPS, but very consistent healing with who's going to do cooldowns when, who's going to do what when. It was a big part of it. So I enjoyed that. That's probably one of the highest keys I've run this entire expansion, I would say. It's up there with that. And it was something that we were all very relieved to have done. So I actually wasn't at 3K yet when we started this, and I didn't have my Resilient 12 yet, because I hadn't done Priory, Dawn, and I think it was just Priory and Dawn that I had left when I actually got into doing keys on that night this week that weren't timed above 12s. So, of course, we did a 15 Priory, because, I mean, why wouldn't you, right? So, yes, we went and did a 15 Priory and managed to knock it out, and all of us rejoiced, because it meant we never have to go back to Priory until we've done 15s and everything else. So that's just, like, off the list for a while. And then we went and tried to do a 15 Dawn, and we like missed it because on the last boss, someone took a web to the wrong spot and like killed somebody, and you watch the spiral effect happen. And it was like literally, had we not had those couple of deaths, that was 30 seconds more time, which would have been enough to kill the boss. We would have timed it. And it was like, okay, it's so close. And we only had like 4 deaths overall. And it was like we felt like we did really, really well. And we went back to run back so we chose to wipe, to not complete that, and chose to go back and run the 14. And so we went and ran the 14, and it was so sloppy. And we had like 9 deaths, and it was so out of it. And we were coming up towards the last boss, and we're like, we need at least 5.5 minutes to kill the last boss, but we can try anyways. Let's see what happens. And we go, and we managed to kill it with like 4 seconds to spare. So we get a 14 Dawn, and we're like, we didn't deserve that. Like our previous one, we totally deserved. Like it was really clean play, so organized, so good. And then we do this incredibly sloppy, messy run with people falling through boats and all sorts of stuff happening. And all of a sudden it's like, no, we just, edged it out right at the very end. And you're like, it was weird. So we got both those done, which got me, I'm like 30, almost 3,100 now. Because I got 76 points for timing the Priory, because I had a 10 Priory when we did the 15. So I got 76 points for that. It might have been 11 Priory. And then obviously I went up at least 3 ranks in the Dawn as well. And so, yeah, that got me the mount. So that's out of the way. So I got the 3K done. I've got Resilience 12s done. I'm like 2 keys away from Resilient 13s. So that's going to be super easy to knock out too. And yeah, it was a good week for keys. A lot of fun, but it's neat when you start diving into those really high keys, how that organized play needs to happen.
Yeah, there's also like good deaths and bad deaths. I mean, there's no good deaths, but there's deaths you can absorb and deaths you can't absorb, and that was the difference. It sounds like you ran into on that Dawn.
Yeah, when you have like, hey, here's explosive AoE happening at the same time as someone didn't get an interrupt on a bolt, and that person just dies in 0.2 seconds, and you're like, oh, there's nothing you can do there. That kind of
right.
thing. Yeah.
As long as you can hold that pull together and that person can get back, it's okay. But on a boss, it's like, well, this is just going to compound because it could result in more deaths, and it's just the boss is going to die exponentially slower and whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, for keys so far this week, usually I do keys on Wednesday after raid, so I had to throw in a Thursday night to make up for it. I only got 3 keys done on Tuesday after raid, I think. So, but I ended up doing a whole bunch of keys on Thursday. Vault is done already, so I'll run tonight if people need stuff or want to go, but I don't feel like I need to. I did get my first 13 in time, which was a Dawnbreaker, which we timed by about 2 seconds because we were playing with a Fury Warrior, a guy who I've been playing with since BFA, and he went to go drop his stuff in the darkness, and then he like charge betrayed him, and he died down there because he couldn't get back up the right way. And we're like, we were already like right up against it. And it was like, I don't know if we can do this, but we barely pulled it off. It was funny. I kind of just said to myself, well, I mean, it's Roshanon. He's not going to be executing it anyway. So, you're not in that execute window, right? You got to take it to like 60% health. So I was like, we still got this. I started spending my rage in ways that I would not typically spend my rage. So it worked out. I think I got all of like 12 or 13 points for that probably because I had a 12 in time and like we barely timed that one. So I'm not really trying to push like 3K or 13 Resil. All I'm really in it for at this point is getting vaults done. I know that I'll end up like, especially by the time we get Turbo Boost and with like 5 more months of the season at least, like I have no concerns. So I'm not trying to push super hard. But, just starting to dip toes into 13s and getting 1 in time, and we'll have a bunch of 13s to go around next week. So, we'll start just slowly climbing the way up the ladder. But I'm having a good time in keys. I think there's some nerfs we'll talk about, which were really welcomed and fantastic that came in this week. Yeah. Prot Warrior Thane feels so good to play in these multi-target situations. It's just fun. So, yeah, and a lot of people from my team are really motivated. I've been playing with more different people than I have in a long time. Just like, hey, who wants to go? Let's do some stuff because it's more accessible. And I feel like I could contribute a lot to a group's success in part because like Prot Warrior damage in Thane is pretty high and I have some good gear. Like I have good trinkets. So that contributes a lot of damage. Just good times, man. I feel like that's the way it should be, for the stuff that the game kind of actively rewards you, right? Like there should be paths to attain that you don't have to. I mean, I remember season 1 of this expansion being like, well, okay, we'll like do whatever tonight with the regular group, but then like we really got to get some off nights in, the tag in the resto shaman, because without that, like we can't do keys this season. That wasn't great. So this feels so much better. It's like obviously if you want to hit those high heights, you need to consider these things, but if you want to do 12s, it's like it's really not that big of a deal as long as your group knows how to play in a Keystone environment and like has some familiarity with the dungeon pool. I wouldn't recommend bringing in somebody totally fresh to the system to do 12s, but if you've been kind of on the journey, it's like it's not a big deal. I feel like 12s feel easier this season than they felt last season. So, and we have the big power, we have the cloaks. The cloaks contribute a lot too. So. All that stuff is by design. It feels great. I'm having a good time. I'm just trying not to, like the first week of the season, I went over the top just to get keys pushed and get all that stuff set up so that, I wouldn't have to do it as much in the coming week. So I don't really want to do like 20, 30 keys a week. I want to do 8. I want to do what the game rewards me for doing. And so that's kind of the lane that I'm trying to stay in. It's a long season, and I know that I will hit my rating goals and achievement goals or whatever just through consistency. So I'm not trying to burn myself or anybody that I play without, and I'm not trying to contribute to anybody's burnout. So, you know, that's just kind of the pace I've been taking it, but it's been really fun. I think the moment to moment in keys is so fun right now.
It really is. And I'm on board with you of just doing my 8 is feeling really good at the moment. I definitely I've done more than 8 this week just because of the restarts that we did on some of those higher keys. But I'm feeling like doing the higher keys is just something we're doing because it spices it up and is fun and whatever it is, right? If I was just trying to knock out my 10s, like I really could crush a bunch of 10s very quickly right now. It feels like, I mean, yes, I'm a high rated, druid who's able to do both Boomkin and Resto. So I'm fairly viable to get into groups at the moment. I'm not, obviously the number one picks, but I'm fairly viable to get into groups, which means that I could probably pug into enough 10s to get them done and move on with my life and not really worry about too much. But it's the opportunities to play with friends that I'm finding is just really valuable. And so, I just, that's the thing that sort of got me hooked a little bit, I guess, is that aspect of it. All right. I think that pretty much covers. Is there anything else you want to mention before you hop into what's going on this week?
I just wanted to say, with the Delver's bonus week, I finished Delver's Journey.
Oh, nice.
So that's really cool to have that done this early. I have most of the cosmetics bought off of Sir Finley, so now it's like I have plenty of undercoin for buying 2 extra keys a week. You unlock the account-bound veteran gear you can buy. So not that I don't know that I would really necessarily use it for that, but hey, it could be an option just to get a tune started. It's kind of an expensive way to go, but it is there. It's cool. There's no key discount. The keys cost 2,000 all season, but it was cool to get that done. I think I got like 2. I might have gotten actually 3 ranks unlocked this week because I was like right on the cusp of one. So yeah, the Delver's bonus really felt good. And man, I've not been having great luck with delve gearing on the alts this season. I'm getting a lot of repeat pieces and of course a lot of trinkets. I did finally activate. It sounds so entitled if you go back like 15 years the way sets used to work, but I finally, after a few weeks, activated 4-piece on my Guardian Druid, and I'm playing Elune. I'm playing Laser Bearer. Yep. And like, man, that 4-piece is so underwhelming compared to what Prot Warrior Thane and Brewmaster Shadowpan get. It's so hard to manage. It almost feels like it's not worth managing it. It's like you just rolling the dice and you have whatever stacks you have. It's like, because you got to push the button. You're better off just pushing the button and having no bonus or
because
bad
you're
bonus.
Reducing the cooldown on it every time you use spenders. So when you use spenders, you reduce the cooldown on it. So it feels like you should just be pushing the button. But the amount of times that you literally are like, I've got 1 stack or 0 stacks and I'm just pushing this button is like, it feels terrible. It just does. Yeah.
It's like you're sitting on it going, okay, I can thrash one more time in this window while this buff is up. So like, let me just do that and see if I can get another stack. And then inevitably something happens where you're distracted or you have to react to something happening in the fight and then just falls off anyway because you didn't proc it from that thrash. And then you didn't hit Lunar Beam in time. So I at first I was really trying to pay attention to it. And after playing with it for a couple hours, I sort of landed on just hit Lunar Beam on cooldown because it's better to be Lunar Beaming than not.
Exactly.
And, like if you get a bonus, cool. And like that feels like garbage.
It feels
like
terrible.
That is, especially compared to like the other 2 I've been playing with this season they're just good all the time. Like I mean, Thane 4-piece is so consistent and so punishing to the stuff that you're fighting, and then the burst windows with Shadowpan are just over the top, like unbelievable tank damage for 2025 standards. It's not even that the Guardian 4-piece doesn't do good damage, or like I'm obviously noticing that I'm clearing stuff faster, I'm killing stuff faster in combat, my delves are going faster, but like everything about it feels bad. And geez, it was like, it's so anticlimactic. Like it was, I unlocked the 4-piece. Cool. Oh wait, this is how it works for Guardian. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's really what I was getting at when I've been complaining about Boomkin stuff is what they need to do is just make the proc chance higher. So you just more consistently are building stacks. So like to me, if it can stack up to 6 stacks, the average when you're pushing the button should be 3. That should be the average. When you push that button, on average, you should have 3 stacks. The average right now for me is like 1, which is really weird. Like sometimes I have an outlier and I get 6 and it's like, whoa, this is crazy. I have 6. But most of the time it's like, yeah, you pressed it and you had 1 or 2. And you're like, great, this feels terrible. Like, why? Why is this where this thing sits?
I mean, the tooltip says for Guardian that it's like a 40% chance per thrash. And it's like, I'm thrashing every 6 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever. And it's like, that is not a 40%.
It's not 40%.
I'm not getting it 40% of the time. Like, I think Thane is also like a 40% chance on the proc, or maybe a 30% chance. And that almost certainly procs more in my limited experience than Thrash procking the Gathering Moonlight. So I don't know, maybe a bug fix is in order. Maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. It's just my point is I've played with 3-4 pieces so far this season.
Yeah.
2 of them have incredible designs that are super fun, easy to use, do a ton of damage, look and feel really cool. And then there's the Guardian Elun's Chosen One. Yeah,
and just to be clear, the Elun's Chosen One is identical for Boomkin. If you're in Elun's and you're playing Guardian, and you're in Elun's and you're playing Boomkin, it's the same bonus. So you're like, okay, this just feels bad. Like they need to buff the proc rate on this thing. It needs, like, every time I push that button, it should be at 4, in my opinion, is where that should be sitting. It's a tier set bonus. It should feel powerful. When I press it and I don't have any stacks, or I have 1 stack, I am dramatically lower on DPS versus the hunters and mages that are inside the groups that I'm running with. When I have 6 stacks, I can keep up with the hunters and mages and sometimes pass them that I'm in groups with. So why is it that I'm like dramatically lower on a regular basis, and then every once in a while when you get good procs, hey, I can actually keep up and I'm ahead or whatever? Like, whereas they're just consistently high all of the time.
Or just, like, how about this? Make Gathering Moonlight just last longer. When you proc one, it's like 20 seconds. That's not a great solution, but at least that way you'd have more control. Make it 30 seconds or make it a minute, as long as you're in combat, right? Like, it doesn't do anything by itself. The buff does nothing. So anyway, I don't want to turn this into Druid complaining, but my main takeaway was like, dude, the other 4 pieces I played with this season are so cool.
Yeah.
Why did Elun's Chosen get stuck with this? And I guess maybe I'll try some Druid of the Claw this season, which I was playing last season and liked. It's just not great for Delps because you're usually fighting a ton of little stuff, So, but I do like Druid of the Claw better thematically, so maybe I'll start messing around with that because I wasn't feeling it.
I'm with you. All right, with that, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week is the War Within Dungeon event, meaning the Sign of the Warrior buff is up, making the final boss of War Within Dungeons drop an extra piece of gear. And there's a quest to complete 4 dungeons on Mythic difficulty, which rewards a heroic Manaforge Omega gear cache. So, this does not apply, the extra piece of gear, to Mythic Plus, just to be clear. This is Mythic 0 and below, you get the extra piece of gear. Just keep that in mind. When it comes to the heroic reward, this is something that is worth knocking out. Like, 4 dungeons on Mythic difficulty, you can complete this quest in Mythic Plus. So if you're doing, like, even if you're doing 2s this week or 0s to get that extra piece of gear, whatever it is, pick up this quest ahead of time, get that extra piece of heroic Manaforged Omega gear. It can be like Dimensius drops or like final boss drops. So you can get stuff. You can get boots, the boots off of Soul Hunters, man. They might come out of this. You might roll lucky and get 40% boots out of this thing. So keep that in mind.
There's some really good gear out of Manaforge Omega. I mean, some really good trinkets. Yeah, the cloak activating boots. I mean, all that stuff is great to have hero track, even if you're doing higher level content. Like, unless you have the myth boots from Soul Hunters, then you're not going to find anything better than that. So yeah, it's good. I mean, years ago, this used to give Keystone Dungeons an extra drop, and they shut that off. I want to say in Shadowlands, but maybe that's just... I feel like in BFA it gave you an extra item, and they shut it off in Shadowlands, which I think is a little heavy-handed. But, I mean, Mythic Zeros are pretty simple. They don't add a lot of complexity, right? There's no affixes, there's no count, there's no timer. So this is a pretty good reward for doing some of those. I don't know that I'll have time to do this on alts. Like I'll complete it on the main just because I'll be doing keystones, and so they count for the quest. But of course, the main doesn't really need anything from Heroic, Mana Forge, Omega. I've been incredibly lucky with a couple drops. So I don't know. If I had more time, I would totally do some zeros, or like round up some friends. Hey, let's do some zeros or baby keys. Let's just get some stuff on some alts. I don't think I'll have time for that this week, but really cool event and really good early in the season. It's still quite early in the season, even though it doesn't feel like it because we kind of zoomed up the progression path, but it is still quite early, and so this is great timing on this. People are going to want to do dungeons anyway. You find plenty of dungeons to queue for, plenty of people running. People will be doing all big widespread of difficulties, and the reward is great, and it could be something really substantial. You get a real game changer out of doing this, and like I'm not rating on my alt, so if I could get in there, man, if I could get like a brand of Ceaseless Ire just from doing this, that would be incredible.
Oh, so, yeah, that's true. That tank trinket would be a big one too. So yeah,
really good event this week.
The event on top of that, because Blizzard followed our advice ages ago and went, hey, you know what? Pet Battle Bonus Event just isn't a good solo event on its own. We'll give it something else. So Pet Battle Bonus Event is also going on. Sign of the Critter buff is up, where Battle Pet experience gained is increased by 100%, as well as there's a quest called The Very Best, where you can win 5 PvP pet battles with a team of level 25 pets. It rewards an ultimate pet battle training stone, instantly trains any pet to level 25. So that is the other thing happening this week. We have your Koresh weeklies on your checklist that you want to be sure you are knocking out and finishing off. This is for all that nice rep. If you happen to have picked up the Darkmoon Fair buff on Saturday before it ended, and then hung on to it without logging in until the Tuesday, you could take full advantage of this with the extra 10%, although I'm not keen on not logging into WoW for a few days, so I definitely have lost that buff during this period of time. But yes, that is certainly something else that you could be choosing to do, because there's lots of Koresh Trust rep to get from your warrants. You're more than just a phase, your ecological succession. Now keep in mind, the ecological succession has weekly quests in there you can pick up that give reputation and ones that don't give reputation. So when you're picking up all your quests, just be checking that, because unless you're trying to get Valor Stones and Weathered Crests, or they might be carved, I think they're weathered crests, you don't necessarily need to do all of the quests that are there that are the blue quests that you can pick up. Some of them give reps, some of them don't. So just as you're accepting, have a look. There's like 6 or 7 that don't, so that might save you a bit of time if you're trying to farm up that reputation. Outside of that, we got our world boss for the week. Obviously, you want to be sure you're knocking out Reshinor. That big old dragon, still not nerfed, still takes 3 passes for me to kill, and I still don't see a lot of people downstairs. So, it is one of those fights that is there. It exists. It's taking time, but you get yourself that Warbound piece of loot, which you can be traded at any character. I got 3 rings in a row this week. I finally got like a belt or something, so that was nice to get. So that was out of the way for me, and not something that was just another ring sitting in my bank, because I only have so many alts, and as much as they could all use rings, I like getting other pieces too. And that's that 668 loot. That's your Warbound piece of gear. You could still go back and kill the Godfather as well, which gets you that 642 eye level gear that's Warbound. So if you're someone who's like just got a fresh alt up, it might be worthwhile having your main kill off the 642 Godfather to get yourself some eye levels on that, because typically once you get around to that 670-ish mark is when you start diving deeper into doing like Mythic Plus content and doing normal raid and that kind of thing. So anything that sort of helps you fill in the gaps and get up to that point will be super useful.
And 642 is kind of like the baseline for the quest campaign. So like if you're below that, right, that's like where you would end up from doing the entire quest campaign. So if you're just trying to get into stuff, like that's a good thing to do, even though it's a bit outdated now. It's like, well, here's a 642 piece, slap that on, go get your cloak. You could start getting, so you can go, if you have some renown already, you can go get the 2 pieces from the vendor. There's like a veteran and a champ piece you can get. So you don't have to go through and like do a whole bunch of questing to get really low gear. You can kind of start with that and then start jumping into stuff that's going to give you better rewards.
Yeah, you get your Delve belt that goes up to 701. You can get like there's a bunch of pieces. There's like 4 or 5 pieces you can get that are just handed to you on an alternate character that help you catch up to that number pretty quick, which is pretty useful. Titan Disc Fragments is this week, so this is you collecting those 100 Titan Disc Fragments from rares, treasures, dungeon bosses, and delves. So be sure you're picking that quest up, so you're just passively earning those as you're out in the world doing the variety of other things you want to do. It is Packed House for the Brawl. This is basically a arena, but with 15 versus 15 people in it. So you'll be heading into an arena. There's going to be 15 players on either side. It is a very fast, very Smash sort of experience in a brawl. And obviously there's the Something Different quest for winning one of these, get you some Marks of Honor, Conquest, and Honor. But if you want a really fast arena battle, this definitely feels like a very fast arena battle. You basically walk out, you'll start watching people drop in health almost immediately as different cooldowns are popped and craziness happens. And yeah, I've done this a few times. It is definitely what I would define as a brawl. It's like the exact intention of what a brawl should be, in my opinion, is this.
Yeah, it's maybe the wackiest because, I mean, the entire arena could just explode in a matter of a couple of GCDs.
Yeah.
So it's pretty funny. Yeah, some really fast games here. Not a whole lot of technique. If you could figure out some way to survive as long as you can, then it'll give you an advantage. But there aren't really supposed to be 30 players in an arena, so it's pretty funny. This is what I haven't done the brawls with consistency in a long time. I used to do them like weekly back in Legion BFA, but I haven't really done them since then. But when I was doing them on a regular basis, this was one of my favorite ones because kind of like a coin flip as to whether or not you get the win for something different or not. And it's like the games are so fast, so you're not wasting a lot of time on a lost cause. So yeah, it's fun. It definitely would make me laugh. Even when I would lose, it's like, oh, look how fast everybody exploded. That was ridiculous.
And then you just queue for another one and you're back in, 15, 20 seconds later and you're doing it again. So like I'm with you that it's just silliness and fun, and does feel a bit like a coin flip. So yeah, you just have to see how it goes and keep queuing. All right, the Mythic Plus affix for the week is Ascendant. This means that 10 orbs will appear every minute while in combat, and they need to be interrupted, knocked, purged, or crowd controlled. This gets you a movement speed and haste increase. And so this is my least favorite one, personally. I've definitely embraced Jason's feedback of this, which is it's just really a lot of clutter on your screen. Getting 10 separate bars that all pop up for orbs, the fact that they stagger spawn in, so you sort of have to hang around until all of them have spawned. All those things are not great. So it's not really my favorite affix at all. I'll also reiterate that as a class that is basically living at haste cap, more haste doesn't do anything for me, so it just isn't super interesting for my class. But the movement speed isn't something I super notice in a big way. So I just, in general, this is like my least favorite of the affixes. It's the one that could get reworked next, I would say, if I was going to pick one of them for them to work on and decide what they want to do. Even if it was like, hey, we're going to have, 3 orbs spawn that you now deal with, and they can spawn based off of each player's location, so they could potentially spawn like farther away from each other and need to be dealt with. That to me would be more interesting than 10 orbs spawning in a staggered pattern. That is just, The advantage to this is if you have a monk, you can put down your Ring of Peace. That will pretty much get all of them. If you're a boomkin, you can use your Interrupt, and your Solar Beam will get a bunch of them. You can use Typhoon to knock back. You can use Earthquake and Thunderclap. Not Thunderclap. You can use Earthshock. What are the ones I'm thinking of? There's another Shockwave. Thank you.
Shockwave will do it.
It's one of those waves. It's one of those shocks and waves things that does
it is a shocking
Shockwave.
Yes.
Thank you. That'll do it. So that'll help out. There's just a lot of abilities that will interrupt, crowd control, stun, disrupt. Probably my favorite one for me is Disorienting Roar, because it's got a really wide range and it's radial out from your character, which means that you can basically just be like, stand in the middle, you do a Disorienting Roar, it pops all of them, and you can move on and do what you want to do. So that's my fave. But yeah, it's not super hard to deal with. It's just a lot of clutter on your screen, and the buff isn't something that I like very much. So yeah, weakest affix.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's easy to deal with, but the problem is that you're holding some pretty valuable stuff in order to pop the orbs, right? Like I don't really want to use Shockwave on orbs. I want to use it to stun the stuff that I'm fighting. But it is what it is. I think there could be some potential with reducing the number of orbs. And yeah, I don't know, maybe something like you mentioned, have them spawn on different players. Maybe like we've done raid mechanics like that before, like on Razageth, where It's like, okay, this ad spawns. You spawn this ad that you then have to interrupt, and on heroic and up, you had to interrupt it twice. Like, have it be maybe something like that, where each player gets an ascendant orb that they have to knock or interrupt or purge or CC. I don't know. That might be a little bit better. It's nice if you have a monk and they're just good about Ring of Peacing every single time. That seems like kind of the cheat code, because Ring of Peace has somewhat limited applications otherwise. You don't always want to use it. There are times where it is good if you can use it as an interrupter to reposition some casters or whatever, but like, it's less of a big deal to reserve Ring of Peace for this than like Shockwave or something of that nature, where you could get some real value on the mobs that you're fighting on a consistent basis, especially since a lot of like Prot Warriors are talenting into the talent that reduces the cooldown on Shockwave. The more targets you hit, it's like you want to be using it a lot. So I don't know. I think there's potential to mess with this. It's been like an easier one to deal with. It's just so obnoxious. It is so much noise on your screen. Waiting for them all to come down is annoying. You're using stuff that you don't want to use in order to clear them. So I don't know. It is what it is. It also seems to, I don't know what this is based on, and maybe it's just weird luck. It's very anecdotal, but it always seems to come in at the end of combat. So after we're done fighting stuff, now we're waiting for the orbs to come down so we can clear them and then move on to the next pack. And I guess that's where the move speed comes in. But like, it feels really dumb to stand. You're fighting a pack, you're finishing it off, you're about to finish it, whatever, and then you got to wait for the orbs to come down so you can clear them and then move on to the next pack. Like,
yep,
it's just, I don't know. I think that also, I mean, it does create problems with like timing, because it always goes, all 10 of them go on your tank's location when the timer runs out for them to spawn. And think of Last Boss and Priory. There's some other spots too in this dungeon pool where it's like, if those orbs spawn downstairs at the moment you're supposed to be running upstairs, you got a big problem. So yeah, I don't know. It could be a little bit more friendly. Overall, I mean, I don't think it's a terrible week, especially for dungeon bonus week, when you might want to get in there and do more dungeons than you otherwise would. It's not that big of a deal, but it's starting to stick out a little bit more, I think, as the volume on the other affixes has been turned down. But hey, that's why I like to play in the 12 plus range at this point. I never thought I'd be a no affix guy, but here we are.
Yeah, I'm with you. I definitely didn't think I'd be a no affix guy, but yeah, I'm in the same boat where I feel like affixes, and I'll reiterate this, my stance on affixes is that they should not be Kiss Curse. They should be something that if you can manage to take care of it, it's a benefit, good for you. You did the thing you were supposed to do normally on the fight, plus you did the extra thing, so here's your reward. That is where affixes should sit, in my opinion. Where they're currently sitting is very, very much in the, hey, you have to do this or else you're severely punished because the thing you're fighting now takes 90% reduced damage, which is just not okay, right? And so that to me is like, there shouldn't be a curse aspect to this. It should be people who want to do keystones up until 10 get to deal with an affix as a choice of, hey, if you do this right, you get big benefit. That'll help you do your key faster. That's where I think this should live. There shouldn't be a, hey, all these orbs spawned and you didn't get them all, so you not only didn't get your full buff, but you've now also buffed all of the things you're fighting so that they are now harder to kill. That to me would be really nice to just reduce the negative and be like, hey, you know what, if you didn't get all the orbs because you're heading up the stairs on that last boss, and I guess it would be, there's no longer a bad time, if you will, for the affix to spawn, which is the big thing for me, because there's so many bad times that this affix spawns where you're like, oh, it was during a boss and we couldn't get to it, we're doing the second boss of Arakara and we're all inside of his tight circle and the orb spawned off, where outside of the circle, but everything outside the circle is a one shot, so I can't get to them, which means, hey, this boss is just going to take 90% reduced damage and do more damage for the next 10 to 15 seconds. Like, it just feels bad when that stuff happens, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's no real counterplay other than like, hey, we should wait for the orbs to spawn before pulling the boss, because that sets the timer for when they're spawning to this exact timer that lines up with the boss's timer when the boss is doing the ability. You should not be doing that inside these keys between 1 and 10. Like, you're talking about something that I think people should have to think about when they're doing 15s or 16s or something like that. Should be that kind of calculated stuff is stuff for later keys. That's not calculated stuff for early keys. So let's remove that aspect from this sort of equation, in my opinion. All right. When we are looking at this coming week, we warned you last week that Pirates Day was coming. And so Pirates Day is arriving on the 19th. So we should see I guess a chance for you to get your Highland Drake pirate armor for 50,000 gold if that's something you're wanting to do. You can celebrate in Booty Bay with Dread Captain Demeza. You can get your Dread Corsair buff, and it will give you a pirate costume for 12 hours. You can defeat O'Leary and get the Slightly Chewed Insult book toy if that's something you're looking to get. And players who have completed Avast the Admiral can get their Jolly Roger toy, which is the thing we were warning you about, is if you want to start working on this reputation ahead of time. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but it would have been a good week with Darkwood Fair up and whatnot to try and get all of that reputation buff in. If you didn't, there's still time. You still got 5 days left for when we record here, so probably 3 days left from when you're like really listening to this and what's going on with it before it kicks off, because it's running the 19th and 20th, which is the Friday and Saturday this week. It's going to run from 1 p.m. Eastern time until 1 p.m. Eastern time, so just keep that in mind. And yeah, Jason, what's the strat? We'll go over the strat one more time, just make sure people are really clear in case they forgot. Forgetting your reputation.
It's a lot of grinding. The best way to do it, if you don't want to just drive yourself up the wall, take an alt that hasn't done the questing in Booty Bay. You get on the quest line where you infiltrate the blood sale. And then you get into a scenario where you are helping the blood sale stage this attack on Booty Bay. You stay in that scenario and you just kill mobs. There's not that many, but they respawn pretty quick. So you just kind of go around and kill everything you can that gives the rep. And you just do that until you get, I think you just have to get to friendly, right? So once you get that far, you can just exit the scenario, and then at that point you get some others. You get some Mog and stuff from that part, and I think there's an NPC you can talk to once you have the rep. And then there's a vendor during Pirates Day only, and that vendor will allow you to purchase the Jolly Roger toy if you have the Avast the Admiral achievement, which is the rep. I don't know if there's anything new this year for Pirates Day. The Pirates Day armor, was that 2 years ago, or I think it was 2 years ago. I think it was the second year of Dragonflight. Yeah. So, there might be something new because this is our second Pirates Day of War Within. So maybe I haven't seen anything data mined, and I don't know for sure. But there's not a lot to Pirates Day, but it's pretty fun if you get into the whole pirate aesthetic. I gotta say the Slightly Chewed Insult book toy kind of stinks, but I mean whatever. It's a toy that you can have in your inventory, and I mean the Pirates Day armor is awesome, but it's pricey. But you can only buy it in this 24-hour window. So I haven't been using my Dragonflight dragons very much lately, but the Highland Drake was kind of my favorite. It was kind of the one I used the most, and once I bought the Pirates Day armor, I kind of just ran with it, I think, for the whole rest of the expansion. So it is a cool cosmetic. There's a bunch of cool stuff from it. It's just
dragon,
it's just like it's a super tight window because you just have that 24-hour period for all of this stuff. So keep it in mind. It's like it's this kind of thing would maybe be like a micro holiday now and would not give you permanent stuff, but this is old school. Pirates Day has been in for a long time. And so, it's, if you can't play Friday afternoon through Saturday afternoon, then you just miss out, which kind of stinks, but it is happening. So that's why we try to give like an extra long heads up. It's a thing I was really into when I still needed stuff from it. And if there's new stuff, I'll go do it this year for sure.
Yeah. It's funny, right? Like Pirates Day came in when the like pirate theme thing was really big back in the day. Like Pirates of the Caribbean was big. Everyone liked pirate things. There was International Pirates Day happening, so they decided to do pirate stuff. Like it was added in 2008 was when this thing came into the game. And I remember initially going down to Booty Bay with Robin to get our Chewed Insult book, and that there was just a huge lineup of people all trying to tag the poor shark that's getting his butt kicked by everybody out there in groups of 5 to try and get their insult books. And I don't know. It's one of those core WoW memories I have of them adding this in, way back in the day to be able to get all this stuff. So certainly take advantage when you can of the rewards that are there limited time. We don't know, obviously, if there's anything new happening this year, but if there is, then, obviously we'll report on it next week and it'll already be over. So hopefully you took advantage of getting it when you could at that point. The other thing kicking off is I hope you've been practicing your ram riding, because Brewfest is coming up. It'll be launching next Tuesday, so a week from this Tuesday, and that'll be September 23rd, and it runs until October 9th. So we got plenty of time here to get some good Brewfest in, just over a couple of weeks. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything new with Brewfest this year. Obviously, we'll chat about that too. But it is certainly your opportunity to get down there, do the sausage eating contest, throw some rings onto the back of a turtle, do some beer goggles silliness that happens, defend the Brewfest from the different invaders that take place. Go run around and capture some fictitious animals you can only see when you're sort of drunk on things, and ride some rams around some barrels of apples. Man, this is like quintessential fall to me. This is what kicks off fall. I feel like Brewfest signifies that fall has come in my life. It's certainly something that I enjoy taking advantage of when I can.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the coolest in-game holidays because there's just so much different stuff to do. I'm pretty sure Corin Direbrew got a new mount this year. I assume that's where it comes from. I've seen the model, and it's sort of like a gyrocopter thing, almost like Mim's head, but it's like Brewfest themed. But it's not. It doesn't look like a mecha gnome head, but it's it's that kind of thing. And I assume it comes from Corin, but maybe it comes from tickets. I don't know. We'll report back once we actually get the blog. But there's new cosmetics and a new mount, and I don't know if there's any new activities. There's plenty of activities as it stands. So Brewfest is always cool. It does also come with an XP buff as well, but it's super time sensitive. It's kind of old school and annoying, but yeah, Brewfest is awesome. Looking forward to it coming back and grabbing up whatever new stuff we got this year for sure. And hopefully, if it is a Corin drop mount, it doesn't become this never-ending quest of rolling the dice every day and facing disappointment. So, it's good and bad when they put in a new holiday boss mount.
Yeah, it can really vary based on experience. I'm hoping with every mount they put in going forward, which I think they have been so far when it comes to these sorts of holiday mounts, is having that protection system in of the first time you try and loot it each day is your highest chance to get it, and then you have a dramatically reduced chance for any kills after that, which just encourages people to just try the one time a day. If you happen to want to try multiple times, or you're killing it on ults to try and get gear, because I'm sure Corin's going to drop like, I don't know, 665 eye level loot or something like that for players to try and get pieces of gear. It would be neat if they made Corin loot warbound. That would be kind of a cool thing if they sort of threw that in there as a twist for some of these bosses. You just threw warbound loot on them, so the one time you're killing them every week, you also just get a warbound piece that lets
it's usually so low item level anyway. It's like, I don't want this on most of my characters. So yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, it would be a neat way to do that too. So I don't know. There's some neat things they can do with it. Hopefully they have a look. But yeah, I really hope the mount drop chance, if it is a mount that drops off them, is one of those you have a high chance and your chance increases every day you don't get it. And that to me is a really good system. So it's been working out well for a lot of people, and hopefully they stick with it. Okay, hot fixes for the week. They fixed a bug causing Twisted Mana Sprite's overheal value to be much higher than intended. The absorb, the overheal absorb value to be much, and by much higher, and this is something we talked about on the show, it was 81 times higher than it should be. So just a little bit,
Whoops. Yeah.
The tooltip expressed that it was supposed to be like, puts up an absorb, and that absorb is like 200,000. And you're like, great, this is really cool. Like good little absorb that sort of just happens every now and then when this guy spawns in and starts throwing absorbs on people. That's great. Except that wasn't 200,000. It was more like, 20 million. And that's a very big absorb shield that is very useful for a lot of people. So yeah, they backed that off. That's no longer doing what it shouldn't be doing. I've heard rumors that it still feels a little high, which I think is fine. Let's leave that alone for people who invested the time in getting one of these and the undercoin and everything else. It's now no longer like the trinket that you use over healing raid trinkets, which is what I think it should be. I don't think you should ever, and we went back and forth on this because I know you think it's good that there can be some delve stuff that can actually be viable in raid. I don't think a delve trinket on normal should like a champion track delve trinket should outweigh a mythic track raid trinket. I just think that's weird when that happens, and there's clearly an outlier there. In this case, it was a bug, and they fixed it. So, it's resolved for people who are out there using Twisted Mana sprites. Basically, weigh it out versus your other trinkets because its value has now shifted in where it's supposed to be.
Well, it's funny that even with the bug being that huge, that then they fixed it and it's still like pretty decent. That kind of goes to show you like how massive that bug was. But hey, yeah, if it's doing 81 times too much of an absorb, then I guess that's something that they're going to fix. I feel like they're letting some stuff go with tuning. I've been waiting for the stuff I've been playing to get nerfed, and it hasn't so far. And they said they weren't going to do more trinket rebalancing this season unless they identified any kind of an issue. So, I think that's cool. But yeah, I guess this would fall into a category of this is an issue that they can't ignore. So, well,
I mean, yeah, it's a bug in that situation, right? So it's not even balancing. This is just like, hey, this is bugged and doing stuff it really shouldn't be doing, which, yeah, it's a very different situation as far as that goes. I think you're safe with your Soul Hunter's trinket for now. I don't think that's going to get messed with. It's doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, I assumed that it would right away. Once I started using it, I was like, oh, this is way too good. And then we just saw, was it 2-3 weeks ago, a big round of trinket tuning and stuff for the season. And they said they don't want to do it anymore. I do think when we talked about that stuff, it's like they got to have a light touch on it and they got to do it as early as possible in the season, because like you alluded to with this, it's like, these are items people have, in many cases, it's a choice you might have made. You might have chosen one of these items over a competing item in a vault row or something because of the information you had at the time. So it does become an issue. Like they got to fix it and balance it as early as possible to avoid the damage there to, players' time investment.
Yeah. The thing about this trinket in particular that stood out for me, which is why it was such a significant imbalance in my opinion, and clearly there was a bug happening, was the tier set bonus you get from having the weapon from the raid and the trinket from the raid, that as a healer puts a shield on targets. Is basically when you heal a target, there's a chance for a shield to go on that target. This trinket was doing more than twice as much absorb as that was. And I was like, you shouldn't have a tier set bonus in a raid whose entire thing is, hey, we put shields on things, be outweighed by a trinket that's on normal from a delve. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. Like,
yeah, it
was out of whack.
Like when you make choices and you like read the tooltips on stuff, and you kind of, okay, you might just eyeball it and go, yeah, this looks like it's better than this, and it's like you made that again. That's like a choice you made, and I think it's important for Blizzard to tune and bug fix the game around choices that they expect players to make. So I think that's kind of. That I feel like that's kind of the philosophy they should be taking, especially this season, since it's going to be probably a bit of a long season and a wacky one as we're at the end of the expansion and our power levels are getting quite high. Like just make it feel fair for players and make it feel like players made a smart decision or they're happy with the decision they made.
Well, it's a good rule that you have there of, hey, if this thing says it's supposed to do a 200,000 absorb, people should have made decisions based off of what it said on the trinket and the text on the trinket, not based off of what people were telling them about how absolutely ridiculously crazy the giant absorbs that this thing is doing, even though it says it's lower, which is happening. So I'm with you on that. Okay, as far as delves themselves, though, they nerfed Nexus Princess Kai'Veza. The Nether Rift damage was reduced for larger groups on all difficulties. Is this still delves? This is still delves. For large, I guess, because you can still have groups.
You can do it in a group.
You can do it in groups, I guess. You
don't get all the cool stuff. Like, but I haven't done it. I haven't done any of this stuff in groups because it's like, I want the cool stuff for soloing it, and I'll bite the bullet and I'll take my wipes and go. But I mean, you can do it in groups.
You can do it in groups, and I was remembering like season 1, I went in there with Ted and Josh on day one, and we, cranked out the double difficulty version of this version of boss. So yeah, you can do it in groups. So yes, they did reduce the damage in larger group difficulties. The Nexus daggers now spawned 3 additional phantoms, was 4, so 1 less phantom to turn and face and soak. So that makes that a bit easier for you. And the time between phantoms was increased by 0.25 seconds on the question mark difficulty. So the normal question mark difficulty is, a little bit easier for the amount of phantoms you deal with and how much time you have between them to turn and face the appropriate next one that's going to charge you. The Dark Massacre time between phantoms was also increased to 2 seconds from 1.5. And that's also on the question mark difficulty. But just keep in mind, the larger, the damage reduced for larger groups was on all difficulties. So that's everywhere. As far as raids go, this are dungeons and raids. We'll start with dungeons. Arakara got itself some more tuning here. So Trilling Attendant, the Resonant Barrage initial cooldown has been increased, as well as the ability cooldown was increased by 50%, and the periodic damage reduced by 12.5%. That you felt this right away. This was very noticeable on this trash going.
And welcome. Yes. Very, nice changes.
The Engorged Crawler's Venom Spit ability cooldown was increased by 40%. On Avanox, the Starved Crawler health was reduced by 20%, as well as the Gossamer Onslaught periodic damage reduced by 17%. So, yeah, easier to kill those little ads that spawn by 20%, which is huge, especially on higher difficulties. And the Gossamer Onslaught being the periodic damage you suffer from the boss's ticking damage while you're dodging the white circles on the ground. So while he's spawning the white circles on the ground and you're dodging those, you're getting constant ticking damage. That was reduced by 17%. So a bit easier healing going through that phase as well with all the movement. And then a new
feels great.
Yeah, it does.
I gotta say, like, the nerfs this boss were great, because this boss never felt really that hard to me in season 1, and for some reason it was not feeling great to start the season off. So
yeah,
these changes. The first time I did it after this, I was like, oh right, like DPS just killed the crawlers and back to the boss, and we're just fighting. And then Gossamer Onslaught comes out, and the healer is remarking that it's tickling, like, we're doing like a 12 or whatever. That seems like the way it should be. So it's a first boss. Good changes.
Yeah. And a Noob Zect, they address an issue with the Eye of the Swarm where the rim visual is larger than the actual safe zone, which is a big deal this season because they upped the damage of not being inside the safe zone as one of the early changes they did to this place, which means if you step out of that safe zone, it doesn't tickle. It hurts. It will almost one-shot you on most difficulties if you step out of that safe zone. So yes, it's important to actually know where that safe zone is. I actually did one of these on Saturday, yesterday. I ran an Arakara, and I noticed that the visual of that circle was remarkably smaller. Like, it was like 3 or 4, maybe 5 yards out of where it should have been in size. So like you do feel that it's a smaller, tighter circle now. And all that was happening was people were moving towards the edge of that and then just dying. So I'm glad that they made that address it properly. Okay.
Yeah, really good. This boss is now like the worst boss in here, I think, which is weird to say, but considering all the changes they made to third boss, it's like this boss seems to be the one, when I've done this so far, where it's like people end up dying to something the boss is doing. We end up losing a ton of time on this fight. Yeah, this is now sort of becoming the bigger problem. So maybe, I don't know. I wonder if we'll see some more changes, but having the visual line up with where it's actually safe to stand, that was good. That was a nice upgrade, because that swarm is so deadly now.
And now the big changes for the week that everyone rejoiced at. Halls of Atonement. They reduced the number of depraved obliterators and depraved collectors near the Shard of Halkias, which is just the amount of casters that you have to deal with. They have been reduced. They reduced the density of creatures in the courtyard before Echelon. Again, the amount of casters you have to deal with has been reduced. The enemy forces requirement was reduced by 10%. Hey, you just don't need to kill as much trash, which means you're pulling less before you go into that second boss. The Stoneborn Slasher enemy forces value has been increased by 50%. Hey, if you happen to pull slashers, they are now actually worth more so that you don't have to pull other trash as much as you were previously. They resolved an issue where Echelon's door would not open upon being defeated. Well, there's just a wipe right there. That's the end of your key, because if you can't actually go through to the next part to get towards the last boss, then you just, lose. They resolved an issue where Echelon's Blood Torrent and Stone Shattering Leap were not visible if the target was in the air. Yes, this was happening to me. I already talked about this, where we had people that were double jumping and whatnot, and we wouldn't see where the Blood Torrent was supposed to spawn, and it was just like, who's going to die? Because everyone would kind of move around a little bit because you wouldn't see where the circle was going to be, and then circle would appear on someone and kill them. And you're like, okay, well, that's really unfortunate. So glad that got fixed too. But overall, like, this has fixed a lot of routing issues. This has fixed a lot of issues with the dungeon of it feeling good to run. I still think they could probably take that enemy forces down by another 5% to make it feel really good to run through, and kind of like more like one of the speedy ones that I think it should be. I think Halls should be one of the dungeons that people look at and go, oh, I really want to do a Halls because this is pretty fast, right? And I think the thing that slows it down a lot is the amount of trash you need to pull. We still don't have any trash skips happening in this dungeon. And I almost feel like every Mythic Plus dungeon should have an area where you're making a determination of, hey, do we want to use like an invisibility potion or some sort of skip to get past this chunk of trash? And I think that is something that we're not seeing at all in this place. We're actually seeing people go, okay, let's be sure we're pulling that extra little bit every time we go through this. But we're not pulling like a whole other half of the front courtyard, which is nice. We're not doing that anymore. So this 10% is super helpful in that sense. It saves like 2 or 3 packs.
Yeah, I mean, I went in here and did this, I think on Tuesday, like right after the nerfs came in, and it just felt like a different dungeon, to be honest. You still have to do some quite large pulls. It's still a tight timer. They didn't up the timer. I mean, I was doing it on a 12. I wasn't doing a 15, 16. I'm sure on those difficulties that this dungeon is still, not really one you want to be doing compared to the rest of the pool. But I felt like I could just kind of pull whatever, and it worked out just fine. Like I pulled basically like what I would pull back in Shadowlands as much as I can remember. I pulled a little bit more maybe. And also you don't have like a Venthyr in the group to mind control the slashers, but that's okay. I think just like changing the forces requirement, upping the requirement, upping the value on the slashers. The part between first and second boss was I think I mentioned it last week or the week before, like when I was trying to get my 12 in time, that was the thing that just kept stymieing me, because it's just so hard to pull efficiently through there and safely and get everybody up to second boss. So that has been significantly reworked, and I think they straight up removed the slasher that padded all the way back and forth across the front of the stairs. So that's great. I think like my first time 12, the thing that popped the resilience achievement for me, I think we had about, 30 seconds, 15 seconds left. When I went back in and did it with like a relatively similar group, of players this week, I had about 3.5 minutes left. So, yeah, nice upgrade. Halls is now not something that I'm dreading somebody suggesting that we do. I mean, it's still challenging. There's still stuff that you have to know what you're doing. You have to have an efficient route, especially because you want all the anima in the Halkias like as fast as you can, because you got to wait on that stuff to fly through the zone and load into the boss so the boss activates. So you still have to make like good choices. It's not just a free key, but it feels a lot more fair. I'm glad that they made these changes, because my initial couple weeks in Halls, I was not happy to see this dungeon come back in the first place. And then, as I started stepping into it, I was like, wow, they actually made this even worse than I was afraid it was going to be. Like I liked this less than I liked it in Shadowlands.
I will say I like it more than I like Sanguine Depths. So I'm happy to see this over Sanguine Depths.
That's true. Yeah.
if I had to pick from the Revendreth dungeons, this is the one I would choose over the two of them. All right, Manaforge Omega. They did have some changes in here where they fixed an issue where the teleport option to central operations became unavailable if players activated the raid skip after already unlocking this teleport location. So yeah, they fixed that one for folks that couldn't move around the way they needed to. On Forge Reaver Araz, one of the first walls that teams sort of run into, the Arcane Obliteration will now still cast even if the target dies early. So you got to factor that in. Arcane Siphon damage was reduced on Mythic difficulty. The Arcane Harvest and Silencing Tempest targeting updated to deprioritize targeting tanks. and to reduce the possibility of targets being selected by both of these abilities at once. This is massive because they did in fact change so Silencing Tempest could target tanks early on, and people just hated this because it was really punishing for tanks inside their group. So the fact that that now deprioritizes them is big, because that will help tanks out a lot on this fight. And then reducing the possibility they're going to be selected by both abilities at once is massive as well, because you shouldn't be targeted by both these abilities. So yeah, that will make this fight easier, which is good to see. Overall, for Nexus King Salhadar, this is the first big round of nerfs that we've seen for the last two bosses, because we also have some Dimensius nerfs as well. And this is on Mythic that I'm talking about. So it's our first big Mythic pass that they did. Stage 1 on the Oathbreakers, the command Besiege now activates 9 fractal images, was 12. And the time between each activation has been increased by 0.375 seconds. So it'll be like roughly, 30% more time between those images happening, so keeping that in mind. The banishment damage has been reduced by 10% on Mythic, as well as the invoke the oath damage reduced by 15% on Mythic. So making those damage checks a lot easier for folks. Intermission 1, the Nexus Descent. The Manaforged Titan health reduced by 10%, Nexus Prince health by 10%, and Shadowguard Reaper health by 10%. So on that fight, basically when you hit that first intermission, people go off to their platforms and you have to defeat the ads on those platforms. Those ads' health has been reduced by 10% to help folks clear them up and get back to the main platform faster. So that's just a lower DPS requirement overall on those platforms, which will get you back into the main phase faster and get damage on the boss faster, which will speed the whole fight up. So overall, good changes, I think, to Nexus King to see those happen. I haven't started progging on this yet, so I haven't really felt the level of these changes yet, but I like just reading them through and knowing where the pain points are. This seems to address some of the pain points, which is good to see for some teams. It's
starting to claw back that like event tuning, right? Yeah. Like, this is tuned for the race. This is tuned for the absolute top of the heap.
Yeah,
you can't leave it like that for very long. Like, the race is long over. The players are playing the bosses. Like, let's rein this stuff back to reality a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. All right, in Dimensius World, the cosmic radiation damage reduced by 10% in Stage 1 and Stage 3 on Mythic difficulty, as well as the fusion damage was reduced by 10% on Mythic difficulty. Living Mass, Void Warden, and Nullbinder health was all reduced by 10%. That is going to be massive for being able to kill those ads faster and get people positioned faster, so that's big. The crushing gravity damage reduced by 25%. That's also very big because that's basically a raid-wide soak damage that we end up seeing people take throughout the fight. Reverse gravity now targets 4 players, was 6. This is also really big. So how they were doing 6 players I thought was genius, where basically 2 people would go to the very back of the platform, the very edge of the platform, and 1 person would stand just in front of them, Venn diagramming the 3. And those 3 people would get lifted into the air. And those who picked up Living Mass would run over and stand underneath of them, and they could stand underneath the front person and get them down really quickly. And by the time that person was all the way down, the 2 back circles had almost overlapped because they're all moving towards the same point. So as a triangle, those 2 back points converged to where the front point was, and then they were bringing down both those 2 back people at the same time. It was a really cool strategy to see, but when you're lifted into the air, you aren't able to do a whole lot, which means you're essentially removing 2 additional players from the equation than you are now. When it's only 4 players, not only is it easier to deal with, you're also just allowing 2 more players to continue doing damage to the boss or healing or whatever it is they need to do inside that circumstance. So big change there for reverse gravity. Glad to see that. The Gamma Burst pushback strength on Mythic difficulty has been reduced. This is big. This is the one I talked about. This is just literally people being pushed off of a platform. You almost had to 100% be at the very front tip of the platform and having killed 1 ad in the line that leads towards the back of the platform to do this phase. You had to do that because you were going to get pushed all the way back to the platform, even with a speed boost like, Wind Rush or a Savage Roar, whatever that is, or Stampeding Roar, you were still being pushed all the way to the back of the platform. So this has been reduced, which apparently has made this much easier, so I'm glad to hear that as well, because that was not something I was looking forward to. The Black Hole Radius has been reduced on Mythic difficulty. This is in the last phase when you collapse the worlds, the planets that are there, they collapse into a black hole. The radius of those black holes has been reduced to sort of give a little more space. The interval between shadow quake impacts has also slightly been increased on Mythic difficulty. So overall, this is our first pass we see at Dimensius. We're not seeing any health changes to Dimensius themselves. I still think that in phase 3, we could have seen like a 3 to 5% nerf on his health just in that one phase. But we'll see where it goes. This is one of those bosses where they left alone for a long time with good reason, because teams were finding ways to kill it, even in the state it currently was in. But as Jason sort of said, we sort of hit that point where, hey, it's time to start removing some of these barriers that were Mythic, race to world first teams that were doing this. We were seeing 400 plus pulls on this boss. I don't think any boss should ever be over 200 pulls, in my opinion, most of the time. Maybe 225 if you had like a really rough raid night and people are not performing very well. But when you get into the 400 pull range, I get flashbacks to Jailer and that whole tier, and it was just like that was an unacceptable level of difficulty to ask players to do. It was just punishing and kill teams and ruin morale, and it made me take an entire expansion off. So it is what it is, right? Like that's one of those things, and I feel like this is good changes to see, and hopefully this means that we're seeing that Hall of Fame close out pretty quick at this point, right? Like you have to consider, like we're moving into week 5 is week 5 is what we're moving into raid tier wise here, and we're still sitting with like sub 50 teams having killed the last boss. That feels kind of weird. It just does. Like it's strange, and I think that we're welcoming in, hey, let's get the Hall of Fame closed up, let's get this moving, because we're like Turbo Boost based off of estimates is happening in 3 weeks. That's like just 3 weeks away from when we start hitting that and start moving into the next phase. And hey, we're gonna get pre-patch for the expansion a couple months after that, and then suddenly we're into the new expansion. So we need to wrap this up and get people into farm and let people do what they want to do and do achievements and get mounts going out, and all that stuff has to start happening. And because we're progressing stuff faster, we're not going to have a season 4 or anything like that. That like the tail end of this expansion is coming up fast. So it's good to see some nerfs coming in here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just this is the way that they do it, right? Like when they release stuff, it's released for the race, and then they tune it back. I mean, there's a lot of power sources. We haven't gotten very far up the raid renown track yet. Like you kind of mentioned, we got the 3% coming in again. That stuff will stack up, and that's obviously kind of like a de facto health nerf to stuff. So yeah, I think like not much of a surprise to see the stuff coming in, and I'm sure it won't be the end of it. I think what they do basically is they have some kind of target in mind for the kill rates that they want to see, and then as they're not hitting that, or as it starts slowing down, then like, all right, what's next? How are we going to target this? Like the gear curve and the power curve from other sources is not it's not overcoming the tuning. So I'm sure there'll be more, but these first couple coming in. So far, we haven't really seen any nerfs to like specifically to heroic stuff in any kind of a huge way, and I feel like I'm not sure how much we even really need it. I mean, I think this is one of the best feeling heroic raids in a really long time, so that's kind of a good spot to be in. I think teams that are working on AOTC or whatever, it's doable. It's not the hurdle that maybe it was years ago. And so that's a really good thing. And so maybe it doesn't end up seeing too many changes, but obviously the top end needs some changes, and also the bottom end needs some changes.
Yeah. I'm quite happy with the balancing of the raid overall. I think the earlier bosses could have been tweaked to be a little bit harder. I think it is weird, like Fractilis was the pushover that Fractilis was. I think it's a little bit weird that the Soulbinder fight was a little bit easier than I thought it was going to be. There was some, like, Lumathar is probably where Lumathar should be. I agree with that. I think the first boss is certainly one of the harder first bosses, but is where, Plexus Sentinel should be. I think Soul Hunters is just a puke of a fight. Like, it's just too, like, especially on Mythic, there's just too many abilities, too many overlaps, too much stuff happening, too visually overstimulating, too many people having to do too many mechanics at the same time. It's just, they did not do a good job with that fight at all. When it comes to like balancing, tuning, design, to me, that is just a mess of a fight. And honestly, I think they should just nerf it into the ground so that people can get their boots and get their trinkets and move on with their lives with this quote unquote optional boss. Because at this point, Like even RA teams like, hey, we're going to kill Soulbinders the one time, and then we're going to keep re-clearing everything else and just skipping Soulbinders, because it's not worth killing every week when it comes to the difficulty that fight sort of lends itself to. It's and unless we see, you know, dramatic differences in our character power and with the nerfs to that fight. The reason why it's optional is because it's just not a great fight to do, and no one enjoys it, and everyone complains about it. So, like, I think that should tell you everything you need to know, Blizz, about needing to fix that fight or change it. When it comes to the later bosses, like, you know, we're still like, there's still only 41 teams that have killed the last boss, even with these nerfs that have come through. So, keeping in mind that, yes, you know, this is still a challenging encounter. Although we are seeing, you know, another 5 or 6 teams that are sub 10% that are going to be getting there soon. So I give Dimensius another 2 weeks before we start to see the last week of stuff closing out, which puts us almost at the 2-month mark for this raid. And I think the 2-month mark might be where they close Hall of Fame, and then we see another big wave of nerf and adjustment stuff to sort of help teams get there before month 3.5 comes around, when essentially we're moving out of this expansion. And that's what you want to be starting to clean up a bit, right? Like, we might end up in this expansion for 6 months, like they might end up in this patch for, well, not patch, but I guess this era, this season for 6 months. But I doubt it. I think we're going to be in this season for maybe 5 at the most. And I think we'll be in pre-patch for a good chunk of that. So I'm curious as to what this all is going to feel like as far as prog goes, and making sure enough teams get through there. And as you said, hitting those benchmarks, because that's the big thing for me, is when you look at the kill benchmarks over, you know, the span of an expansion, you shouldn't see the number of teams killing the last boss on Mythic progressively going down throughout the expansion. It should be the other way around. You should see more teams during that expansion doing what Jason's team is doing, is starting into Heroic, clearing through Heroic, starting into Mythic, doing a few more Mythic bosses. You should see those numbers rising. Like, there's absolutely no reason why a team like Jason's team shouldn't be able to kill Fractilis. Like, they should. They should be able to get to that point and kill that boss with the remaining time that's in this. Like Nexus, like Soul Hunters, Nexus Prince, and Dementia, sure. I can see those not necessarily being on the table, depending on people's commitment and how much time they want to put in and how many pulls they want to put into something. But bosses that take less than 50 pulls to kill should be very much on the table for teams that are doing Heroic and dabbling into Mythic. And the majority of those other bosses are in that world, and certainly will be with the, you know, power increase that comes in over time from the Renown track. So I like that's what we should be seeing. We should be seeing more bosses die tier over tier throughout an expansion as more teams delve deeper and deeper into Mythic content. And I'm disappointed when we aren't. So I do think they need to be sure they're hitting those benchmarks. Okay. Items and rewards. The time walking stone core items should now drop at the correct item level when obtained at max level. Nexus King's Command spell visual orb for Oathbound is now hidden while out of combat. I actually haven't experienced what that looks like yet, because I haven't played around with that trinket as much yet. The Mana Forge Vandal's Raid Renown, attuned to the Ether effect at rank 6, is now limited to weapon enchants only, and also increases the power of Death Knight Runeforge effects by 10%, which is a buff. The affected tooltip temporarily will be, you know, incorrect, etc., etc. They haven't actually fixed the tooltip yet, but yeah, I think everyone was very confused as to how this was supposed to work. The Raid Renown bonus that came out this week, attuned to the Ether, and it was, yeah, specifically weapon enchants that are supposed to affect, and rune forging weapon enchants are supposed to be affected a little bit less than normal weapon enchants, but that's just because they're stronger in general. So that is the overall look for that. They also made it so they fixed an issue where the Mana Forge Vandals View Renown button would remain locked after completing Meet the Vandals, which I think is kind of hilarious, where you just could not actually look at your Renown track after actually starting to find that particular Renown. So like, you're like, hey, I've met the people, I'm good to start the Renown track, let's have a look at it. Oh, you can't. It's now locked. It wasn't locked before, now it's locked. That's a funny thing. As far as the Guise of the Phase Diver, it could unintentionally kill you when used on Dimensius. So yeah, apparently that got fixed too. I would certainly hate to be progressing on Mythic Dimensius and just die because the Guise of the Phase Diver killed you. That would be very unfortunate. So that one got fixed too.
It's pretty funny. Although I guess it's only funny if you knew why. Right? Yeah. Like, if it just happened and you couldn't figure out why, then that's not too funny. But I don't know. If you're like, oh, it must be because of, which I don't know. I don't know. I guess it's kind of appropriate somehow, right? Like Dimensia sees you phase diving and just kills you or something because you're not supposed to be doing that. Like, okay.
The other one that didn't make it into the notes here, but I know came out this week, is you should now be able to use your Druid flight forms during Dimensius. So when you're doing Dimensius, Druids should now actually be able to shift into their flight form and fly around. I actually thought that was intentional when they were first doing it. And I thought it was intentional because Druids should, if they get dismounted, quote unquote, or shifted out of their shapeshift form by getting hit by, something they shouldn't have, should be able to shapeshift back into their flight form again and then fly away and keep doing it. So I thought the intention was, hey, we're not going to let Druids do that because it's like cheating. But, Druids cheat on a lot of other things too. So, maybe that you can do that now. I don't know. Maybe they added a little stun so that you can't. But if you can actually do that, then Druids just, up their survivability during the flying phase, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. I think that on second to last boss of Amir Drasil, it was the same. Like, I think Druids could use their flight form for that. So I think it was just, just a bug. I mean, yeah, there were some Raid Finder nerfs and stuff to Dimensius as well, and I think they rolled that into that section. So yeah, it's some other quality of life changes with Dimensius. I think Raid Finder Dimensius is probably still a disaster, but they're trying to make it better. But the fight has so many elements to it. It's like, how do you move through that with a totally uncoordinated group and in a group where many players are just not even really attempting to do anything? I don't know. It kind of speaks to the issues with Raid Finder as a concept overall. I think Dimensius is an awesome boss on normal and heroic, but I would never even want to step in there on Raid Finder.
As someone who has done it on Raid Finder, I will say that the way that we actually managed to accomplish doing it was all but like 8 people died on the first phase. And then those 8 people managed to make it through the next 2 phases by dodging a lot of back and forths and killing off the ads on the 2 transition platforms. And we got to the last platform in the last part of the raid. We rezzed 8 people. And then the 16 of us managed to defeat the last phase, which was tight to actually, honestly, as far as the actual timing went. And that was with determination of like 1 stack of determination that was tight because we were down to the last ring of, because what happens with that fight is you start with like, essentially, if you picture an orbit of planets, the orbit gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So each ring gets enveloped as the fight goes on. So you get closer and closer and closer to the boss until you just, you die because there's nowhere to stand. And we were on the last ring when we managed to defeat it. But the way that we beat it was, do not battle res anyone until the last phase of that fight, because if they die, then they're probably going to die again. And once you get to the very last phase, just res as many people as you can, which was hilarious, and then defeat the boss. So hopefully you have a core group of 8 to 12 people who can live through those first phase and intermissions in order to get to the last phase to be able to do that. And hopefully one of them can battle res so that you can actually res everybody. But yeah. Okay, the sign up is up for the MDI and AWC for 2025. The Ghosts of Koresh content update is here, and the Arena World Championship and Mythic Dungeon International return for War Within Season 3. Prepare for the fierce arena clashes beginning October 3rd, and join the Mythic Plus with time trials starting October 1st. So how to get involved? You register at Raider.io to secure your spot in the AWC or MDI. You access tournament realms with fully geared characters at max item level and earn the all-new Season 3 banners, the Unbound banner and the Algari and Astral Champions prestigious banner. You tune in live on Twitch or YouTube and cheer for your favorite competitors. So the Arena World Championship in Season 3 is going to have a gauntlet that the players have to go through, as far as basically they're going to have regional cups and then have the gauntlet and then have the grand final. And the combined overall prize pool for that is $200,000 that they're pulling from for that. So teams in Europe and North America can register at Raider.io now. And the War Within Season 3 cups is what they're registering for. And you will then have their chance to fight for their share of $20,000 in the U.S. Cup. It's $20,000 per cup. So we know that 60,000 of that prize pool is going just towards the cups. And basically, once you compete past that, you'll be going for the rest of the money, and they're going to battle to get their share of the rest of that prize pool. So, yeah, it is. It's going on. AWC Cup 1, 2, and 3 are October 1st 8th and 15th. And the broadcasts for those are the 3rd to 5th, the 10th to 12th, and the 17th to 19th. So if you're someone who's looking forward to esports in October, it is coming up. The Gauntlet is going to happen on November 14th, and the actual grand finals happen on the 15th and 16th of November. So you'll be getting some November time. This is normally where we'd see like BlizzCon stuff happen for this sort of thing. It would happen over that weekend with all the grand finals and big competitions and stuff. So no BlizzCon this year, but this is the timing still seems very consistent with previous BlizzCon things. However, it's probably a week later than normal BlizzCon, to be honest. We know that next year BlizzCon is going to be in September, so it'll be much sooner that all that stuff kicks off, and we'll have to see what that looks like. Now, the MDI. The MDI is going to be kicking off October 1st, like they said, with the time trials. Players who sign up get access to those tournament realms. From the time trials, the top 18 global teams will advance to the MDI groups. The groups format has been adjusted slightly to feature 6 teams competing at once with daily eliminations. The new dungeons and a modified spec variety rule with a $30,000 prize pool for each group. And the best 6 teams from the groups will join 2 representatives from China to face off in the War Within Global MDI, which will share the $300,000 prize pool for the total of global MDI champions. So what that looks like for folks is time trials are the 1st and the 6th of October. We then actually look at Group A from the top 18 teams competing the 24th and 26th. Group B is going to be the 31st to the 2nd of November. There's going to be Halloween MDI Group B competing here. We have Group C doing the 7th to 9th of November, and then the China 6 teams will do their own competition separately, which won't be broadcast. And then from that, 2 teams, so each of those groups go forward. So we're going to have the top 8 teams, November 21st and 23rd for the global finals for that $300,000 total overall prize pool for the competition. And yeah, this is going to be spicy. You're going to be getting into this. And the nicest thing about this is the way they have it laid out is none of the PvP or PvE stuff overlaps. So literally it'll be every weekend there'll be something new for you to check out between AWC and the MDI stuff. So it literally alternates weekends, it's pretty cool, or happens a bit later, right? So AWC Cup 3 happens the 17th to 19th with Group A MDI happening 24th to 26th. So they just sort of like spaced it all out well so that we're essentially going like, hey, the finals for AWC happens a week before the finals for MDI. So if you're someone who's a fan of all those esports, you can catch all of it and not miss any of it because there won't be any overlaps. And it just means that as viewers, we get like 2 months of esports, which is a lot if you're someone who's into WoW esports. So that'll be coming up and certainly worth checking out for folks. So be sure you get in there and have a look.
Yeah, I'm interested in the format changes for MDI groups. We've lamented our waning interest in MDI over the years. It used to be so cool, and it's sort of lost its shine over time. I really hated the head-to-head brackets where teams would race each other as a format. I much preferred Great Push once they brought that in, but the whole like these 2 teams race each other and then the team that wins moves on, that just didn't make any sense to me for the way that MDI is set up. Like I always felt like all the teams in the group should all be racing the clock, it should be exactly. And so it sounds like maybe they're going more in that direction, and then they're gonna just knock teams out as rounds go along and have 2 teams per group advance. That sounds a lot better to me and a lot more interesting overall. It seems like it's just a fairer way to run the competition. So that seems cool. And
yeah, I want to touch on that if I can.
They say a modified spec variety rule, and we don't have details right now, but so obviously they're trying to change up the format, change up the rules. I think that could only be a good thing because I think MDI got really stale with the traditional kind of format outside of Great Push. So, I at least raised the eyebrow and went, oh, well, maybe I'll have to check that out, which I haven't done in a while.
Yeah, and what I wanted to say is we had a lot of conversation about the format of MDI and how it runs and how it should be done in heats, in my opinion. And the big thing I want to highlight is when you looked at the overall run times for these teams, you would have teams that were 3 or 4 minutes behind other teams that would progress ahead of them because they beat their team in their competition. But the other 2 competitors who both timed faster than that team only one of them would advance. And you're like, this doesn't make sense as to how you're laying this out. Like, doing head-to-heads makes zero sense. Like, even from a spectator point of view, to me, it was harder to watch, because it would be like, and this is a great example, it'd be like watching downhill skiing in a competition, and they're going to show you two separate people going down the track at the exact same time in a split screen, and commentate on both of them back and forth, with one of them getting smaller and larger and smaller and larger, depending on what they were trying to do, and trying to keep track of what's happening. Like, like, all that really matters is you'd be like, okay, well, where's the number in the side of the screen that says where this person's at? Because that's all that I can really use as a reference, because I can't really watch what you're doing when you're bouncing back and forth between them and showing me two at the same time. It isn't interesting. It's much better to show that sport as, hey, here's one person doing a competition. Here is the time the other person hit when they hit these benchmarks going down. So in this case, it would be boss kills. So they'd be like, the fastest benchmark right now is this time. How close are they to the fastest benchmark? And that's information you can have. But otherwise, you're just watching one team, and they're just commentating on one team. So I think by them saying they happen simultaneously, I'm hoping we're going to see some of that. But I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. I just think Heats is way better in how they're going to lay this thing out. So I'm with you on that. I'm hoping that this comes through that way. Okay, Legion Remix PTR update. I know Jason has popped in and checked this out a little bit, but just so folks are aware, they have basically cranked this up to 11 from where it was previously. A lot of people were complaining about this just not feeling as powerful and crazy as it should, and they have apparently made it much more crazy and powerful. So as far as powering up goes, they say that now all phases of the Argus Eternal phase will share the Argus Eternal item level cap of item level 740. Additionally, each rank of Limits Unbound now grants 1% versatility, which is a lot of versatility when you start thinking about when you start pushing that number up there. Furthermore, all secondary stats granted in Legion Remix now ignore their diminishing returns and hard caps, which is crazy. So you're talking about like, oh, well, normally when you get to 35% haste, you start seeing some pretty large diminishing returns. It's actually better to put points into something else. Nuh-uh. Now you just dump it all in there, and you just have wild and crazy, power gains on some of these things. Not to mention, you're stacking versatility, and versatility doesn't have diminishing returns, which means versatility is just and will remain static 1% more damage and 1% reduced damage taken for every 1% you have. As opposed to that sort of dropping off at a certain point, it just is what it is, which is wild. So with that, they're allowing players to push their stats beyond the 126% limit, which I didn't even know was the limit. Altogether, with these changes, we're testing a significant increase in the maximum power available to players from the beginning to the end of Legion Remix. I think someone at one point, I saw a web post online somewhere that was saying that you can get up to like 900 and something % versatility over the span of Legion Remix, which is... Yeah,
I saw some screenshots of 999% versatility. Yeah. That's a lot of power. That's an absurd power level. So.
It's wild. Yeah. So across the board, the fixes and updates that went in was they adjusted the spawn rate of empowered enemies in Heroic World tier so that spawns are more balanced across zones, and overall empowered enemies are increased. The spawns of them are increased by 33%, so you're seeing them a lot more often. They increased the rate of infinite power gains on all levels of infinite power knowledge by 25%, which in other words means, hey, you're just gaining a quarter more than you previously were, which is a lot. They increased the rate at the high rarity epoch mementos from caches and of infinite treasures, as well as dungeons and raid bosses. So you're getting more of that currency, which is awesome. And they increased the duration of the time warped obelisk buffs. A lot of them got buffed up. The Void one was 30 seconds, Pact was 120 seconds, Assassins was 60 seconds, and Swiftness was 90 seconds. With Fell, Trickster's damage increased by 33%, and they also reduced the health of Quest Boss and Rare in Heroic World tier by 40%. So much easier to kill the Rares and the Quest Bosses in that difficulty as well. With several achievements, which were character-specific, are now account-wide inside this overall too. So huge changes to Legion Remix. It should feel way more like zippy and powerful and one-shotty out there without having, hey, as you sort of said, your rotation doesn't matter. Just press a button and like 9 passive effects will go off and kill something for you. It should just make your character feel really strong, which is, I think, what we were aiming for when we were talking about, getting rid of the gems and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I played a bit last night since some of these changes came in. Now I picked up the character that I was playing and was just continuing to level it up. And I think I don't know, I hit a weird bug or something, or maybe it's because I had a character that was, between two iterations of these builds. Because I talked to Bronze Brandbeard and I got my item that is supposed to bring me up to the amount of expected infinite power that I'm supposed to be at for my level, and that gave me a ton of power, which let me unlock a whole bunch of traits on my artifact, which was really cool. Some of them are flat stat bonus increases. Some of them are proc effects that happen. Some of them are things that modify your active ability that you choose on the tree. But then I used another one after I had leveled up a couple of times, and then I tried to use another one, and then something bugged out and set my infinite power to like negative 50,000 or something. So as I was doing stuff, I was like paying off that debt, and I couldn't buy any new traits. I logged out and logged back in, and then I had way less infinite power than I had when I started, and I tried buying the item from bronze again, and it didn't work. It didn't adjust my infinite power level. So my character might have been in like a weird bugged or like unusable state to begin with, because it started on the other side of these changes. But the time I did spend playing, I was really enjoying. I felt like I was getting all kinds of stuff everywhere, like the items that power up your character, just like your artifact absorbs them and you get raw stats. You get gear just everywhere, so you're constantly getting item level upgrades because it's dropping from stuff. You're getting it from caches, from turning in quests. There's so many sources of it. And the obelisks I was running into would last like 4 or 5 minutes in some cases, the ones that give you some kind of a buff. So that's plenty of time to run around and get a couple quests done. Yeah, it's feeling good. And I think, what people are projecting is that once you get sort of powered up through this whole process, you're max level, and you have like you're starting to put points into the infinite trait, which is just like it includes just like flat versatility per rank, that you should be able to solo mythic raids and decently high keystones and stuff like that, which I don't know if that's great, but it just from a personal taste and preference perspective, and having played a ton of MOP Remix, but I think it's clearly what the most vocal audience wants, and it's probably a decent target to shoot for, because it means that casual players who maybe just want to check it out and get a couple things off of bronze vendors, they can get there without having to go through anything too intense, and the completionists have a route to do it at their own pace and schedule. So it's good. I think it's still going to not be like actual WoW, but Legion content is so great and it's so cool. And I have such fond memories of it. And I do really like what they did with the artifact and the traits, and then your jewelry and trinkets modify your artifact traits as well. So it's very Diablo 4-esque, where you get an item that turns on a talent that you don't have, or adds additional ranks that you wouldn't be able to get. So it's kind of random. You have to sort of choose between stuff that you don't really have control over. Whereas in MOP Remix, it was like, here, you just do this. You'll eventually get all of these things for sure. You put these together and off you go. This is your optimal build. And now your gems will kill everything for you. Obviously the powers that we're getting in this mode are going to be, sort of your primary damage dealers and stuff in combat, but you will still be, I feel like you'll be playing at least a little bit more of your class than you were in MOP Remix. Still not a lot, but more. And also, you are going to probably run into more interesting decision points more frequently, because the jewelry and trinkets just have random traits on them, and it's partially determined by item quality. So like green ones will just have one, and I think blue ones will have 2 different ones and purple ones will have 2 different ones, but the purple ones will have like more ranks of those traits. So as you go through and you're getting these from all these different sources, you could end up with some really cool, mix and match kind of sets of jewelry and trinkets you can do to amplify whatever build you're playing, or, dip into traits you wouldn't be able to get on the tree that you went down. So I think that might help it from feeling stale like MOP Remix did at the end, because you might get a trinket that has some cool traits that you weren't using before, or you get something that boosts up this key trait for you that goes 3 extra ranks or 2 extra ranks or whatever, or you can get it on all those different slots, so you can get like many additional ranks on this key trait. Like that could be really cool. And the only way to get that is like playing the game and earning rewards and getting more trinkets and jewelry to drop. So, you know, I think that could keep it fresher. I was starting to see the potential there a bit last night as I got, you know, I mean, my character's only in like the 20s, but as I started getting some more gear and getting, you know, filling out those weird slots that aren't armor, I dug it. So I don't know. I think the potential is there. And ultimately, I think what players want is to be OP and just crush through the content and collect everything. And I think that they'll be well on their way to doing that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I sort of was hearing from a lot of the changes that they were putting through is even with people being able to solo hire end keys and mythic content, what that really allows for is someone whose buddy wants to do something with them who does not engage in the content as much can essentially be carried by their friend, and you don't need to find a group and pug a group and put a group together, whatever it is. If you have a friend who's like Legion is what they do every day and that's what they really enjoy, that person will be able to be like, hey, yeah, sure, come on in, I'll help you out. We'll run through this thing on Mythic or run through this thing on whatever and get you some gear and get you some stuff and we'll get you set up and going. And you can sort of accelerate that process, which really it should be because it's a limited time event. So I'm glad to hear that some of that is moving that direction. Okay. We know that this PTR that's currently up is going to be live until September 16th. And then they're going to be pulling down the Legion Remix PTR. So if you're someone who wants to get in there, you've only got a couple of days left before that goes away again. And with that, the actual 11.2.5 development notes, we had a couple of things in here. The Mark of Twilight Oath may now actually be deleted, which is the item that drops off of the Nexus King in Maniforge Omega. That gets you like the mount or whatever it is, right? Is that Mark?
It's from Dimensius, I think. Yeah, it's like the AOTC mount, but it's you don't get it. You don't get the AOTC mount from the AOTC achievement, right? You get it from the kill, and then you get a quest item, and then you turn the quest item in, and then you get the mount from that. If for some reason you got that on multiple characters without turning it in, you're just stuck with it right now. Like you can't delete it, you can't abandon the quest or whatever. You just have to wait. So this actually requires like a patch fix to deal with. So hang tight. In a few more weeks, you'll be able to actually delete it if you ended up with an extra one.
They also allowed the ability, this is something that's coming in, obviously it's 11.2.5, to hide your location from recent people you've done groups with. If you're someone who doesn't want people to be able to find you inside of the social tab under, hey, who have you recently grouped with, that you can actually turn that off by going to settings and social, and you can hide from recent allies. So you're not showing up on, if you feel like you had a group, the group didn't go well, someone was being abusive, they can't like look you up later on and keep messaging you because they're mean. That's just something that is there. So if you want to hide that out, you can do that. That's something that's coming in the patch. The move pad, which is accessible through settings and then general, now supports press and hold functionality. This option can be found in the cog icon dropdown on the move pad UI. I know this is something that one of the guys that I do occasional key stuff with and hangs out with me and Ted and Josh and them is Touchpad Warrior, and Touchpad will be very happy to have more touchpad functionality with this sort of stuff. So keep that in mind. That's going to be another fun little thing for people to play around with if that's something you're wanting to use to do a lot of your movement and that kind of thing. All right, with that, I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm giving a special shout out to Arajian, Anthony, Bradley, Bruce, Chris, James, Garrett, Kapawi, and Shorel. Thank you so much for all that you give towards the show. We really appreciate all of the funds that people from all of our patrons put towards keeping the show on air and live and hosted, and pays for all the sites and the streaming and all that kind of fun stuff. The equipment, my boom arm is being held together by duct tape and things, and so I recently got a new boom arm which I need to install, and that'll stop a lot of the squeaky, creaky, noisy stuff that's been going on with mine as it's sort of slowly falling apart. So that'll be great to get that done, and that's something that I was able to use some patron funds to help support. And so I appreciate all of you all and everyone who puts stuff towards the show to help keep the show up and running and going smooth.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, patrons. We couldn't do it without you. So thank you for all the support over the years. And hey, if you liked today's episode, thank a patron.
Yeah. Our Patreon is live over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. If you're someone who wants to hop in and support the show, you can go to patreon.com/thestartingzone, preferably on your computer's web browser, because all the apps mark everything up everywhere. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. If you register for something through your phone, it will cost more. for you than if you do it through your web browser. Here's case in point. I was looking at YouTube Premium because I've been watching a lot more YouTube content lately and considering whether or not I wanted to do that. It was $3 more expensive to do it on my phone versus doing it on a web browser. That was the difference. The literal plans per month were $3 more expensive per month on my phone versus just doing it on my web browser. That was the difference. So like, please stop signing up for any services at all through your phone. They are just gouging you money through doing it through your phone. So just keep that in mind. And I guess if you've enjoyed this episode, you can head on over to your iTunes or Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. They really help out the show, and we love hearing the reviews from our listeners. That's going to wrap up episode 701 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, then head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show and leave your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter at The Starting Zone or on Blue Sky at thestartingzone.bsky.social, or you can join our Discord server by going to thestartingzone.com/Discord. If you want to get your hands on some TSE gear, that's over on our Dashery store. A friend of the show, Oni, came back, was showing off his hoodie, which we hadn't seen in forever. We also saw a few other people showing off their hoodies and their gear. So thank you so much for those who pick up some of that gear. You can get that at thestartingzone.dashery.com, and you can check out all the designs on shirts and mugs and stickers and sweaters and that kind of stuff. So that's pretty cool over there. And if Jason, if you're trying to find you on the internet, where can they find you?
You can find me on socials, over on Twitter at Shieldwald or on Blue Sky at jlucas.bsky.social. Check both sites, but I mostly just post stuff to Blue Sky. So come say hi in either place. But if you want to see what I'm up to, check it out over there. And you can find video channels on twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. Streams are usually Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday, 7:30 Eastern, doing Raid and Keystone stuff. And I might be back to co-streaming to YouTube. I think last day for drops is actually Tuesday. I think the Shadefur Brew Thief is finally going away in a couple days, so we might end up streaming elsewhere. But yeah, come check out the video channels as well.
If you're trying to find me, you can find me over on Blue Sky at spencerhd.bluesky.social, on Twitter at Spencer_Downey. You can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD or over on youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.